I know.
All right, now that is critical, right? All these things happening, Jane, and there's no mention of 911. In fact, Michael Amir Williams talks about how he got to the hospital, and still didn't know what was going on. But Joseph DiBenedetto, criminal defense attorney, want to bring you in because it goes further than that. Michael Williams said afterwards that Dr. Murray said that there was a cream in the home that people wouldn't want to know about. He wanted to go back to the home and get it, but Michael Williams told security to lock down the house. What did you think about that? It seems like he maybe was suspecting something was going on.
Well, Ryan, let's just take a step back for a second. We're focusing on this failure to dial 911. When you dial 911, who is it that we look to get in touch with? We call paramedics, right? You have a doctor on the scene. You're going to call a paramedic. A paramedic has the better ability to revive somebody other than a doctor. I think there's an overemphasis placed on the failure to call 911. He's a doctor, somebody who's been trained to revive people, somebody who's trained to detect vital signs. This is an issue, in my opinion,
I have to jump
that's
in and
blown way
say
out
this
of
to you.
proportion.
Here's a doctor who didn't know how to provide CPR. He is doing CPR on a bed with one hand. And that is not the way you do it. And you don't even have to be a doctor to know that. Anybody knows that.
Well,
you put him on a flat surface on the floor.
Jane, let me ask you this, Jane. Jane, how do you know he was performing CPR with one hand? Were you there? That's somebody's recollection of what happened. This is clearly Michael Jackson's handlers. These are witnesses that are called by the prosecution. These are all Michael Jackson's handlers. Do you expect them to say something favorable to Dr. Conrad Murray? I highly, highly doubt that.
Right.
If they were, they would not
it's a very good point.
on behalf of the prosecution.
Joe, let me jump in real quick because the other side of this is Conrad Murray's defense team now saying that that Michael Jackson was already dead when he got back in that room. Conrad Murray wants to go back to the house to pick up some cream. He says it's something Michael Jackson wouldn't want the world to see. What do you make of that? This is a man whose client, whose friend, who the man he's treating, Michael Jackson, just died. He's trying to get back into that house.
Well, I mean, Jane is obviously convinced that there's some sort of cover-up scheme that's about to happen. But isn't it also possible that maybe there is a cream at the home that Michael Jackson wouldn't want the world to know about? I mean, why does everything have to be so sinister? You know, when Michael Jackson was being tried...
Because he didn't call 911?
He's a doctor. He doesn't need to call 911. And according to the prosecution's opening, Michael Jackson died instantly. So he died so quickly that his eyes didn't even close. So what does that tell us?
And then he didn't want to declare him dead when the paramedics at the scene, at the home, said he's dead. And Dr. Conrad Murray is like, I'm not declaring him dead. So you're sort of talking out of both sides of your mouth with all due respect.
Absolutely not. You've heard an opening and two witnesses, and you're ready to convict Conrad Murray. That's not the way the system works.
I'm just pointing out, I'm not trying to convict him. And what I love is when people from both sides say it. That shows you're being fair when both sides are not happy.
Well, Joe makes a good point, though. It's early on in the trial. But let's talk about something else that happened today. Because before Michael Williams took the stand, we had the CEO of AEG Live on the stand, and he was talking about the contract negotiations. This did not look good for Dr. Murray. The AEG CEO testified that Murray initially wanted $5 million a year to treat Michael Jackson. Take a look.
I want to bring in Joseph DiBenedetto, a criminal defense attorney out of New York City. You just heard Dr. Sanjay Gupta say that the defense sources are saying, Michael Jackson was pretending to be asleep. He wasn't really asleep. And then when Dr. Murray left the room, he got up and administered the fatal doses himself in pill and propofol. Now, why wouldn't they have said this whole pretending to be asleep theory in opening statements? That's not how they phrased it. Why not?
Well, you don't need to disclose every single fact during an opening statement. You want to hold certain things close to your vest to see how the testimony develops and spring it on the prosecution at the appropriate time. But the one thing that's undeniable here is we can't forget who the deceased is. It's Michael Jackson. To say he's eccentric is an understatement. You know, we saw what came out in the child molestation case. referring to wine as Jesus juice, referring to the propofol as milk. This is somebody who has an addiction issue. So to lay this plan out the way the defense is, I mean, it's not a stretch. To me, it seems as though it's based in reality. And just one other point, Jane and Ryan, we're making a big deal out of him asking for $5 million. When your contract is up, whenever it is, at the end of the year, do you just accept whatever it is that somebody is offering you? It's business. The same thing.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I'm not asking for $5 million.
He ended up with 2. He didn't do bad.
All right, good point. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.